So, start of a new month in my knitting through my stash project. So far, I've been working on my crochet ripple blanket. This is one of the things I didn't show you in that previous month. I've been picking this up throughout the month when I want a bit of a break from knitting, but I find the motion of crocheting is more prone to pain for me, so I can only do it in short bursts. So this is taking quite a while. I'm only this far. I think the finished blanket is probably going to end up maybe only about 15 centimeters bigger than this. So maybe less of a blanket and more of a runner. We shall see. But apart from that, I've been working on using up the rest of this self-striping mohair and working on this Bombshell bomber. This is a We Are Knitters pattern that I made from a kit previously, and it looked like this. I was never really very happy with it because the yarn bobbled really quickly and it went really fluffy really quickly, and because of the colour I'd chosen it just looked old and tired, even though it was actually quite an expensive cardigan. But I like the pattern, and so having worked with mohair at a loose tension for that Ghost Whisperer project, I thought I'd try it again and use up the leftovers I had of this yarn. In 2 days, this is how far we've gotten. I've got a waistcoat. Amazing how quickly these things knit together. However, because I'm using up yarn, I don't have a lot left to knit the sleeves. I have 17 grams out of 75. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to divide that in two before I pick up the stitches for the sleeves, and then knit the sleeves. It might have to be a short sleeve cardigan, or it might be a 3/4 length cardigan, that sort of thing, and then knit the other one to match. It was also supposed to have a band around the centre front. It was a rib band in the original pattern, but if I have yarn left, I'd quite like to do another I-cord now that I know how to do those. If not, you know, I think it's fine as it is. It's for wearing around the house when it's a bit drafty, you know. The surprising thing about this mohair at a loose gauge is it's really warm. So that Ghost Whisperer I was hoping was going to be like a light, breezy summer top, and it's much too hot to wear in the summer, and so I might have to rethink that one. But this is hopefully going to be for like drafty English autumn days. It would be nice if I could get full length sleeves, but it's looking unlikely. So I'm going to divide up my yarn and see how far I get. So I've finished my Bombshell bomber. This is how long the sleeves are. I don't love it, but it is very comfy and cozy, so I think it will be perfect for what I want it for, which is chucking it on around the house when it gets a bit chilly. And more importantly, this was every last scrap, to the extent that to finish casting off the final sleeve, I literally had to weave in the ends and trim them and then use lengths this long. I had to do about 5 of those. So it's literally every last scrap of this yarn gone. Hey! So that was 75 grams. So it's only 1.5 balls of wool. So let me update my totals. So that brings us to 180.25. So 1.5 balls of wool down. But to be fair, it is only the 3rd of August. So like in 3 days, I've used 1.5 balls of wool, which I think is quite good going. It's amazing how quickly things knit up when you're using 8mm needles when you're used to using like 2mm needles. So having been working on this more modern project, I thought I would go back to my roots and do something vintage next. And I am really excited to try my vintage ankle socks pattern, this Make, Do and Mend Oddments striped one, because it's knit flat. I've never knit flat socks before, so it's going to be a whole adventure in itself. So I've got all my supplies and things down here, so I thought I'll cast on with you and sort of knit along a bit so you can see how this sock is constructed, because it's so unusual. But first of all, I have to tidy up my sewing room a little bit.
The process of making these socks ended up being so unusual, I decided to make an entire video about it. It's linked in a card if you'd like to see this process in more detail, but for this video I just thought I'd give you the edited highlights. The ankle section is pretty standard stuff, just worked flat. It starts with 1x1 rib for the cuff, and then the striped pattern, which is very similar to the slip stitch pattern used for the rainbow jumper, is worked for 16 stripes before dividing the stitches to work on just the top half of the sock. Then the toe is knit in the main colour again, before returning to the stitches on hold to knit the heel and sole. With all the knitting done, it was time to graft the toe together and then seam up the back and sides of the sock. I ended up with the sock being a bit on the small side, so I gave them a good stretch on my sock blockers to try and make them bigger. With the striped pair of socks complete, I was curious to try the other pair of socks that are given in this pattern. So I dug out this trekking hand art hand-dyed yarn from Zitron. I didn't film the knitting of this pair because the construction of these was much more standard and knitted in the round. They have a long turnover cuff, so the ribbing was quite long, but nothing too unexpected here.
So, I've had kind of a bit of a chaotic month in terms of my knitting, so I finally had a moment to sit down and talk you through what I've been working on. So I think the last thing you saw was me working on both pairs of these socks from this 1940s vintage pattern, and so they are both now finished and blocked, so I thought I would show them to you because these are the Make, Do and Mend socks. As you can see, I didn't quite have enough pink to finish the toe on the second one, so it's in green, but I quite like that. It sort of adds to the make, do and mendness of them. I've blocked them and they have grown a little bit, but they are still just a touch too small for me to wear comfortably. It's just one of those annoying things, really. My big toe kind of distorts the fabric of the knitting so much that it just feels really unpleasant, like I'm about to hulk out of them at any moment. So I'm giving these as a gift to my mum, but I really love this pattern. It was so interesting to knit. So having knit this pair of socks made from absolute oddments, I was also curious to try the other pattern suggested in this Weldon's pattern, because you need 3 ounces of 4-ply, which is not a very make, do and mend quantity. They tend to make these things firstly in 3-ply because it goes further, and also 3 ounces for a pair of socks. Coupon wise, that's not much of a big saving. So I was really curious about that. So I wanted to give these a go too. And so here they are, they're blocked. And hilariously, despite this pair turning out much too small for me, despite following the instructions, this pair turned out massive. And so the others, I had to really stretch over the blockers, and here's the end of the blocker. And yeah, they're massive, which is odd. But this pair was knit in the round, much more like I would expect a sock to be, in a very traditional way, cuff down and then separate the stitches. What do they call this? A Dutch heel, I think this one is. Turn a heel, pick up the stitches, knit to the toe, and then do a wedge toe decrease. I haven't turned down the cuffs here because they've been drying. So these are supposed to be sort of like very cute 1940s type that teenage girls wear socks. What I will say about these, both these pairs, interestingly, for their make, do and mend credentials, don't have a reinforced heel stitch. They're just knit in stocking stitch. There's no eye of partridge, there's no slip stitches, nothing, which I found strange. I don't know if it's a case of they just assume you're going to do it anyway. They're like, yeah, work stocking stitch, knowing that anybody in their right mind is going to reinforce their heels at this moment in time. But I did it without them, and the samples in the photographs are also knit without any heel reinforcement. So I don't know, I was just curious about that really. Also interestingly, the toe decreases here were every 3rd round and not every 2nd round. So I've got a very long pointy toe, and actually the number of stitches left to graft together was quite a lot. So you've got quite a wide wedge. I don't know if you can kind of tell what I mean there. So they don't sit very well on my feet. So I don't know whether I'd call these pair of socks a success. They only come in the one size, but that was 72 stitches around. And normally if I knit socks for myself, I'm more like 60, 64, and I've double checked my tension, everything. So part of me is wondering if it's deliberate. Is it a deliberately baggy sock? Was that a thing? I don't know. Again, this is part of why I find recreating these patterns so fascinating, because when I tend to first knit a vintage pattern, I tend to knit it exactly as it says. If it says knit 2 together and I think slip stitch, pass one over, might be better here, I do knit 2 together because I want to get a sort of insight into what these patterns were doing, why they told you to do the things they did. And also, you know, there must have been a logic, and I'm trying to figure out what the logic is. So maybe these are deliberately baggy socks. The yarn I used was this hand dye that I got secondhand from Zitron. I'm guessing that's how you say it. And I quite like the effect. It's kind of almost like a camo effect. It's my sort of colours. I love greens, so I think I will wear these, but sort of maybe as sort of bed socks or something, because they're so baggy. I don't think I could get a shoe on over them. Very strange. And what I have done is I have scanned this pattern. So if you are interested in this pattern, it is available in my Ko-fi shop and on Etsy. It's cheaper in the Ko-fi shop because the fees are less. So if you would like to knit yourself a pair of these Make Do and Mend socks, or these baggy ankle socks, whichever you prefer, you can now get that in my Ko-fi shop. So have fun with that one. So in terms of using up yarn for the stash, this is how much of the hand dye I have left. I haven't weighed it yet, but I think this is going to go towards my, what is that called? Beekeeper's quilt. Beekeeper's quilt. As for the oddments from the rainbow jumper, I've still got quite a few left, so it hasn't really used up a whole ball of wool. As you can see, I've only got very little bits of the pink left. I'll have to weigh this and see where we are. So I imagine I've probably used like one ball of wool. So this is the thing, because I've been sort of all over the place with the knitting. I started like 5 projects. I've had like 5 works in progress this month. I don't know, I was just obviously in a bitty mood is the only way I can describe it. I have made a start on my 1930s super chunky, super bulky Fleischer's pattern, the Thrift Tea Slip On, which looks like this. I'm not really going to talk to you about that one too much because I think I'm going to make a whole video dedicated to that one because it's proving interesting. But I will give you a sneak peek of something else I'm working on from this 1930s magazine because it's the one on the cover. So one of the things that really intrigued me about these Fleischer's patterns were there are several made from things that required a daisy knitter. Now, I'd never heard of this before. Apparently they were like a new thing or a novelty or something in the 1930s because I've seen several 1930s patterns for them. I've also seen some like 70s revival 30s things for them. So like in this one, you can have, what do they call it? A jabot scarf. Very nice. You can have a blouse with a cap sleeves, they call it, but I would really call those flutter sleeves. Don't know what you're on about, Fleischers. Oh, they call it cape sleeve. That's why. Cape sleeve, yeah, that makes more sense. And then of course we have the one on the cover, and I'm making it again out of leftover Danish Camerose organic summer wool. Every one of these videos I go to try and pronounce økologisk sommerull, and I'm like, no, don't do it, don't do it. So the thing with these patterns is you need to buy this contraption, a daisy knitter, and they're not really made anymore. And I saw some that were sort of like reproduction ones on Etsy, but they were quite expensive. And so I happened to type it into eBay and I was able to score an original vintage one for 99p. Sometimes you just get lucky, you know, and I was like, it's meant to be. So my daisy knitter arrived with its original instructions from made in Redditch, England. And essentially what you do is it's a little device which has a knob on the back. And when you turn the knob, these little spokes appear. And then you wrap yarn around the spokes to make a little daisy. And I've got some practice ones here that I made. And then you do have to like sew over the centers to secure it in place, and you make a little daisy. And then you can crochet these together or sew them together to make all sorts of fancy work designs, it says. So I have been working on this one on the front cover. However, I need 371 daisies, and I think I'm up to about 40. So I can show you how far I've gotten actually. I have a little daisy chain. I'm really proud of that joke. So yeah, you can see I've kind of crocheted around them to join them together. And then there's a little picot join at the corner to sort of make them into a fabric, I suppose. Oh, that's the wrong side. Oh, I've been showing you the messy side, sorry. So again, it's just one of those things. I did actually mention this in a previous podcast where I was talking about I wanted to make this willow pattern jumper, and I bought this white and blue organic summer wool intending to make that, and I knitted up to about here on the back, and then I got COVID and it was too complicated to do that sort of colour work while I was very ill. And I came back to it and I was like, you know, I don't like this at all. I don't like the way the fabric's behaving. I don't like the colours together because it's not true white and blues, petrol blue as opposed to navy. And I was like, I'm not loving this. And so I sort of parked that one. And when I went through my stash, I was like, yeah, I'm definitely gonna frog this project. And so I should have enough of the white to do all the daisies in white and enough of the blue to do the ribbing for this. So I think that's what I'm going to try and make happen out of that, which means it's going to be hopefully 5 balls of wool out of my stash. So fingers crossed for that one. What else? Oh yes, I like to have like an upstairs knitting project and a downstairs knitting project so I can sort of knit in bed when I'm resting, because stairs are difficult, man, okay? And it just is nice to have a change sometimes as well. And so this has been my upstairs knitting project for a little while, which is another free Ravelry pattern to use up some more of this woolly knits, double knit that I made the biscuit socks from. Again, it was just a case of I went in Ravelry and I put in how much yardage I had left and saw what came up. And this hat came up, which is the Bohemian Beanie. Yeah, nice cable beanie. I do enjoy doing cables, I just don't do them very often. It's one of those, again, I like knitting them, but I don't like the way they look when I wear them, unless they're in like lace weight. So it's one of those things like, oh yeah, a hat, perfect place for a cable on me. I have enough left that I think I'm gonna make a pom-pom to go on the top, and then that will be all of this woolly knits used up and gone. This is a superwash wool, and I think I need to block the hat because it's a little bit small. And again, like, this is the thing, hats generally, I'm not really a hat person, always look like an egg. I don't know whether it's like I wear them too far down or something on my head, but then when I see people, like, you want to keep your head warm when you wear a hat, maybe I just have to embrace the egg look. But I think a pom-pom on the top might help. This was a free pattern and it was translated originally from Spanish, and there were a couple of errors and typos and things in the pattern. I would say watch out for that if you do like the look of this hat and you want to make it, unless of course you speak Spanish, in which case not a problem for you. But yes, I'll try and, in my Ravelry project, I will add notes about what I think the errors were, if you want to go and check that out. But yeah, this was actually quite a quick make. I made the rib a little bit shorter, again, to try and prevent egg-headedness, but didn't necessarily work. But because it's superwash, I think I'm gonna have to wash it and see if it will stretch out a little bit, because I generally like my beanies a little bit slouchier, and it looks in the images, in like the modelled images, it looks like it should be a little slouchier than it is currently on me. So I think I'm going to block that before I make my pom-pom. Is that everything? Are you up to date? I think so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and weigh my leftovers of these and see how much I've got left, and we'll do an update of the totals halfway through the month, sort of. Okay, so we were at, after the Bombshell bomber, which was this month, or maybe I should actually put the months on here. So we were at 180 and a quarter. So let's see. Let's do this one first because this is going to be easiest. So this is the Zitron, 28 grams. Oh, okay, so is that an ounce? Exactly an ounce. That's what we like. It was 100 grams, so let's call it 1.5 balls of wool. So that means we're at 178.75. And then this is where it's going to get complicated with all the odds and ends of these bits. So what I might have to do is go on my stash on Ravelry.
This took me quite a while to figure out, but basically I used 25 grams of pink, 7 grams of green, 6 grams of blue, 7 grams of tan, and 8 grams of yellow.
That pair of ankle socks used 1 skein of wool. Great. So we're at 177.75. Yay. Oh, where's my cup of tea? So I must confess, it's been a little while since I've done anything for this video because I have unfortunately been very ill. That's the way it goes. But I'm finally here to update you and my totals of what else I've been able to knit in August. It is now September, so I didn't get as much done as I would like, and unlike last month where I had lots of beautiful finished projects to show you, I've actually been
ticking along on some works in progresses in August, so I haven't got anything finished. However, I do have some things to show you because of course you know about the socks. I made 2 pairs of socks this month, and then I was working on using up the rest of the yarn that I made the biscuit socks with last month. And so this is my finished hat that I was making with that. It's called the Bohemian Beanie. It's got a massive pom-pom on the top. Shall we try it on? Now I did block this hat because it's superwash wool and it did get a bit bigger, but it is just a touch too small for me. I'm gonna have to slouch down a bit so you can see the pom-pom on the top. What do you think? I don't know, hats, me and hats, if it's not a beret, it doesn't look good on me, basically. Or like a 1940s topper hat, I can rock one of those. So let me know what you all think. It's very warm and it's very soft. Thanks to this, it's like merino, I think it's supposed to be, superwash merino, this yarn, which is good for a hat because the last thing you want is an itchy head. But is it my thing? I don't know. It did use up all of this yarn, so we have completely eliminated one set of yarn from the stash. I can't bear having hair on my face, so I have to keep it back. So I've updated my Ravelry already and I've updated my tally already. So we were at 177.75 balls of wool. And thanks to this Bohemian Beanie, we are now at 176.25. Most importantly, that's all of this gone. One of the reasons I started on this hat was because I was working on that 1930s Thrift Tea Slip On from the American patterns that Engineering Knits sent me. But because I've been filming that one for its own video, like I did with the Make Do Amends socks, I can't work on it non-stop because I have to wait to be able to film, and I have to wait to be well enough to film, and I have to wait for my house to be quiet to film, and all those sorts of things. So I haven't finished it this month, but I have finished the knitting. It just needs blocking and sewing up. So I'll give you a sneak peek. It's very squidgy and sort of bizarre. It's unlike anything I've ever made before. As you can see, it's knit in one piece, which is interesting. For the 30s, and then obviously you have to seam it up, and I've got quite a few ends to weave in. And I did have to modify this pattern because the sleeves are supposed to be like puff sleeves, and so the cuff is supposed to be really tight, but there was only 12 stitches for the cuff, which would at this gauge would make it 4 inches, and my arms are not 4 inches all the way around. I don't think even like my elbow is 4 inches all the way around. So there was no way this was going to fit me, so I did have to tweak the pattern a little bit, but there'll be more about that in that video and on. But that's going to stand alone from this sort of stash busting series. What I thought I would do now is see how much I've got left and update my totals, because it's basically done. This is how much wool I have left. So very conveniently for the maths, this is 50 grams equals 50 meters. So it's a gram a meter. And I've weighed this already. This is 50 grams unused, and this is 15 grams. So I have 65 grams left. I have 65 meters left. And that means I originally had 6 of these. So that's 235 grams and 235 meters of yarn that it took to knit this. Not very much, actually. I would have thought it would have been more. So I haven't used all the yarn for this, which is annoying. And this is quite a small quantity of a super bulky weight yarn. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make this into anything if there's a pattern for so little yarn, unless it's something that I'm like coasters, which I don't like any of that sort of chunky stuff. So I don't know what I'm going to do with that. I might give it away, or I might destash it, something like that. But let's update the totals. Oh, this is going to make my decimals really annoying, isn't it? We're going to round. Okay, so we're going to say that I've used 0.75 of a skein. So I've used 4.75, 176.25, take 4.75, 171.5. I'm in too much pain to do mental arithmetic. What am I thinking? 0.25 minus 4.75. Banging. Right, okay. So that was the Thrift Tea Slip On. So at the end of the month, we're down to 171.5 balls of wool. Yay, that's quite good. So what did I start with? 181.75. Oh, so we've used more than 10 balls of wool this month. 10 and a quarter. So that's nearly double what we used last month. Thank goodness for chunky weight yarn. And of course the other thing is I've been chipping away this month as well at other projects, lots of works in progress. So that should hopefully mean
that September's total is also higher because I've sort of given myself a head start. That's what I'm hoping anyway. So now obviously you'll have to wait and see how the Thrift Tea Slip On turns out because I haven't made it up yet. But I think we should try on a few of these other bits and pieces and see what they look like.
The finished Bombshell bomber is not great, if I'm honest. I have been wearing it around the house as the autumn has started to creep in, as I expected, but the short sleeves are really not ideal because then I just have chilly arms. But this has been a very useful sort of proof of concept that I would like and would wear a mohair cardigan like this. So maybe once my stash is a little more under control, that's a project I might tackle. I'm very pleased with my Make Do Amend socks. As much as it was a faff to make them, I'll definitely be revisiting this pattern when I need to use up lots of awkward quantities of leftover yarn. As for the baggy ankle socks, I'm not so sure. I like this fold over cuff style because it is so typical of the 1940s era, so I might have a go at writing my own version of this pattern that actually fits. I really like the look of this yarn though, and as it was a late night eBay purchase, I love them even more knowing I got a bargain. The toes on these are just weird though. Thankfully it won't be too much hassle to unpick just the toes and knit them again in a more conventional shape. Because as you can see, these socks are just not suitable for wearing with shoes. These are the largest shoes I own, and when I put them on, there is so much excess sock, it's like my feet get a muffin top. As for the hat, I actually think I finally found a hat style that I like, or at least have figured out how to wear and not look like a numpty. Many of you commented on my previous video about my last hat that the context of cold weather might change my mind, and with the cold weather approaching, I'm definitely starting to feel more inclined towards this sort of woolly hat. Or maybe I've just embraced my inner egg. I've got lots to show you that I've been working on in September, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.